Welcome to Life Stories, where we dive deep into the most emotional, inspiring, and thought-provoking tales. Today, we bring you a story of betrayal, resilience, and redemption. Imagine being cast out by your own family, only to discover their darkest secrets and find the strength to fight back. Taylor's journey is one of heartbreak, courage, and the power of truth as she uncovers the lies that tore her life apart and works to rebuild what was lost. Don't miss this gripping tale. Subscribe to Life Stories to begin today's journey. The crystal champagne flute trembled in my hand as I stood near the back of the lavish ballroom, trying to make myself invisible among the towering floral arrangements. My sister Lauren was gliding down the aisle, her wedding dress shimmering under the soft glow of the chandeliers. It wasn't just any dress, it was a masterpiece, likely costing more than my entire year's salary. Every detail was flawless, a testament to her picture-perfect life. And yet, as I watched her, I couldn't help but feel out of place, an unwelcome intruder in a fairy tale that had long since erased my role. This was my sister's big day, but I knew from the moment I stepped foot into the venue that my presence was a mistake. I felt it in the cold, icy glare of my mother, Margaret, who sat front and center, radiating disapproval. The disapproval was palpable, as if her very stare could strip away the last vestiges of my confidence. To the Millers, I was the uninvited guest, the black sheep, the forgotten daughter who had dared to show up at Lauren's wedding. "Can you believe she had the nerve to come?" The whispered comment drifted from a few rows ahead, spoken just loud enough for me to hear. My chest tightened, the shame creeping in like a shadow I couldn't shake. My husband, Ethan, squeezed my hand gently, his silent support the only anchor keeping me from fleeing. I glanced down at my daughter, Emma, who was fidgeting in her dress, blissfully unaware of the tension crackling around her like a storm waiting to erupt. The string quartet began playing the wedding march, and Lauren reached the altar, where her fiancé, Daniel, stood beaming. Together, they looked like they had stepped out of a glossy magazine spread, the epitome of grace and perfection. My father, Richard, stood beside her, pride etched into every line of his face as he gave her away. I couldn't help but remember how that same man had once told me, in no uncertain terms, that I was dead to him. And yet here I was, risking everything just to be in the same room, hoping for, what? Closure? Reconciliation? Or perhaps just the fleeting hope that I still mattered. "If anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace," the officiant intoned, his voice calm and steady. The words barely left his lips when my mother rose to her feet, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. My stomach sank. I knew what was coming. She turned to face the crowd, her gaze locking onto mine like a predator spotting its prey. "I apologize, everyone," she announced, her voice ringing out clearly in the hushed room. "But we have an uninvited guest who needs to leave." It took a moment for her words to fully register, but when they did, I felt the blood drain from my face. Emma, sensing the shift in the room, clung to my side. "Mommy, why is Grandma mad?" she whispered, her small voice trembling. "Taylor," my mother continued, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it, "you were explicitly told you are not welcome at family events. This is a private ceremony." 200 pairs of eyes swiveled in my direction. The whispers started almost immediately, like a chorus of judgment enveloping me. Emma buried her face against me, confused and frightened, while Ethan stood, his jaw tight with barely contained anger. "Security." Lauren's voice cut through the noise, sharp and smug. "Please escort my former sister out. She's trying to ruin my special day." As usual. Former sister. The words sliced through me, leaving an ache so profound it felt like my heart might shatter. "But Aunt Lauren," Emma's small voice cracked, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm not your aunt, dear," Lauren replied, her lips curving into a cruel smirk. Your mother lost the right to call herself family years ago. She betrayed us all. Two uniformed security guards approached our row. Ethan stepped in front of them. His shoulders squared as if he could shield me from the humiliation. We're leaving, he said firmly. No need for force. How dare you bring a child into this mess, my mother hissed. Her words dripping with venom. Trying to manipulate us with an innocent girl, you haven't changed at all. The whispers grew louder as we shuffled out. Accusations and pitying glances trailing us like poison darts. Always was the troubled one, someone murmured. Such a shame. What she did to her poor parents. At the ballroom doors. I paused and turned back. My cheeks burning with humiliation but my resolve hardening with each passing second. Lauren stood at the altar. Triumphant. Flanked by our parents like some perfect family tableau. The three of them. United against me. Congratulations. Lauren. I said. My voice carrying across the silence. I hope your marriage is built on more honest foundations than the rest of your life. For just a moment. Her smile faltered. Good. Let her wonder what I knew. In the lobby. Emma burst into tears. Her small frame trembling as I gathered her into my arms. Why don't they love us? Mommy, she sobbed. Ethan's worried gaze met mine over her head. He didn't need to say anything, we both knew the answer. I stroked her hair. My heart breaking for her. Some people, sweetheart, aren't capable of real love, I whispered. But as I held my daughter close, something shifted inside me. 10 years of silence. Of swallowing their lies. Of watching Lauren build her perfect life on stolen dreams and buried secrets, that was over. They wanted to talk about betrayal. Fine. It was time to show them what real betrayal looked like. Game on. Lauren. Game on. The drive home from Lauren's wedding was unbearably silent. The weight of what had happened pressing down on me like a storm cloud. Emma had cried herself to sleep in the back seat. Her tear-streaked cheeks illuminated by the faint glow of passing streetlights. Ethan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. His jaw set in that way that told me he was holding back words he didn't want Emma to overhear. I stared out the window. My hands gripping my phone. Where social media notifications about the incident were already popping up. You shouldn't have gone, Ethan said finally. His voice low and even. We talked about this. I couldn't just stay away. I whispered. More to myself than to him. They made our daughter cry. Ethan. Our daughter. And whose fault is that? He shot back. Glancing at me. His tone wasn't harsh. But the accusation still stung. You knew what would happen. You walked right into it. Maybe he was right. Maybe some part of me had wanted this confrontation. Maybe I needed them to see that I wasn't afraid anymore. That I wasn't the same broken girl they had cast out all those years ago. I clenched my phone tighter, scrolling mindlessly through the flood of posts about Lauren's wedding. Amid the congratulatory messages and polished photos, there was one text that stopped me cold. I know what really happened 10 years ago. Meet me tomorrow. 2 p.m. At Riverside Coffee. The message was from an unknown number. But the words set my pulse racing. 10 years ago, that was when my life had unraveled. When my family had disowned me, accusing me of stealing from the family clinic. It had been a lie, of course, but one so thoroughly constructed that even I had struggled to defend myself. My parents had buried me under the weight of their betrayal. And I had walked away, too exhausted and broken to fight. Who is it? Ethan's voice broke through my thoughts. I hesitated. Then showed him the text. His brow furrowed as he read it. Concern etched into his features. It could be a trap. It could be the truth. I countered. Someone at the clinic knows something, someone who was there when it all fell apart. And you're just going to meet them? After what happened today? He pulled into an empty parking lot and parked the car, turning to face me fully. Think about Emma. Think about us. What if this is another setup? I met his gaze, feeling the tension between us like a taut wire. That's exactly why I have to do this. They humiliated me in front of our daughter, Ethan. They made her question everything about who I am, about who she is. I can't let them keep doing this. His expression softened. But his worry didn't fade. This isn't just about the truth, is it? You want revenge. I didn't deny it. Maybe I did want revenge. Maybe I wanted my parents and Lauren to feel the kind of pain they had inflicted on me for so long. But more than that, I wanted answers. I wanted to know why they had done it. Why they had chosen to destroy me to protect her. And I wanted to make sure that the world knew the truth. The next day, I arrived at Riverside Coffee a few minutes early, my stomach churning with a mix of anticipation and nerves. I spotted her immediately, a small woman with sharp features, sitting in the corner with a laptop. Olivia Chen, the family clinic's former accountant. She had aged since I last saw her, but there was no mistaking the tension in her face as she closed her laptop and motioned me over. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Neither was I admitted, sliding into the chair across from her. "Why now, Olivia? Why after all these years?" She glanced around nervously before pulling a USB drive from her bag and placing it on the table between us. "Because I can't stay quiet anymore. Your sister's wedding was all over social media. And when I saw what they did to you, I had to do something." "What's on this?" I asked, picking up the drive. It felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried the weight of a decade's worth of secrets. "Financial records," she said, leaning in closer. "Proof that your father framed you. And more than that, proof of what Lauren did. She was responsible for that patient's death back in 2013. She wasn't even qualified to be administering treatments. But your father buried the truth. He used the money he accused you of stealing to cover it up." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had suspected as much. But hearing it confirmed was another thing entirely. "You knew about this back then," I said, my voice shaking. "Why didn't you come forward?" "My daughter was sick," she said, shame flickering in her eyes. "I needed the insurance. Your father threatened me, and I couldn't risk it. But she's grown now. And after what I saw yesterday, I can't keep quiet anymore." My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Lauren, "Having coffee with anyone interesting?" I froze, then glanced out the window just in time to see Daniel's car pulling away. My pulse quickened. "They're watching me," I murmured. Olivia's face went pale. "I shouldn't have come," she whispered, already gathering her things. "Wait," I said, reaching for her arm. "Let my husband drive you home. You'll be safe." But I wasn't sure if safety was even possible anymore. I pocketed the USB drive, my mind racing. The Millers had spent years burying their secrets. But now I had something they couldn't ignore. They wanted me silenced. But I wasn't going anywhere. By the time I got home, the USB drive felt like a ticking time bomb in my pocket. I locked myself in the study, plugging it into my laptop while Ethan put Emma to bed. My hands trembled as the files loaded. What Olivia had given me wasn't just proof, it was an arsenal. There were financial records dating back a decade, detailing every questionable transaction, every payoff, every fabricated audit. Then there were patient records, including the death in 2013 that had haunted me for years. The case had been ruled as equipment failure, but now I saw the truth. Lauren, unqualified and reckless, had administered the wrong dosage during an experimental treatment. The patient had died. And my father, Richard, had buried the incident. He'd paid off the grieving family, falsified Lauren's credentials, and pinned the missing funds on me. The betrayal burned anew as I stared at the evidence. They hadn't just framed me, they'd destroyed me. Ethan knocked softly, stepping into the room. His face was a mix of concern and exhaustion. But when he saw my expression, he stopped cold. "What did you find?" he asked. "Everything," I said, barely above a whisper. "They framed me to protect her. And she, My voice caught in my throat as I gestured to the screen. She killed a patient. Ethan. They covered it up. He leaned over my shoulder, scanning the files. His hand found mine, grounding me as my thoughts spiraled. This is enough to destroy them, he said. But if you use it, they'll come after you harder than ever. They're already watching me, I said, showing him the text from Lauren. Daniel saw me with Olivia. They're trying to scare me off. Ethan's jaw tightened. You can't let them win. I won't, I said, the resolve in my voice surprising even me. But I'm not doing this alone. They've taken enough from me, I won't let them take you or Emma. The next day, I called Lauren. She didn't pick up the first few times, but when she finally answered, her voice was sharp and cold. What do you want? Taylor. We need to talk, I said. In person. She scoffed. Why would I do that? Because I know about 2013. I know what you did. And I have proof. There was a long pause. When she finally spoke, her tone was quieter, almost fearful. Where? Lakewood Park, I said. Tomorrow morning. She agreed, though I could hear the hesitation in her voice. For the first time, I felt like I had the upper hand. When she arrived, Lauren looked different. The polished, composed image she'd perfected over the years was cracked. Her usual confidence replaced with something closer to panic. She sat across from me on the park bench, her posture rigid. Say what you have to say. I know the truth. Lauren, I said, pulling out my laptop and opening the files. About the patient. About the money. About everything. Her eyes widened as she skimmed the documents. Where did you get this? It doesn't matter, I said. What matters is that I'm done being silent. You and Dad destroyed my life to protect your lies. And I'm going to make sure the world knows it. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the screen. Then, to my surprise, her shoulders slumped. You don't understand, she said softly. Dad didn't just protect me because he cared about me. He did it because he needed leverage. Everything I've done, everything I've become, it's because he made me. Her words stunned me. 4 years. I'd seen Lauren as my enemy, the golden child who could do no wrong. But now, sitting across from her, I saw the cracks in her armor. I saw the woman she might have been if our parents hadn't poisoned us against each other. Then help me, I said, my voice gentler. If you're tired of living under his control, help me bring him down. Her gaze met mine, and for a moment, I thought she might refuse. But then she nodded, a flicker of determination in her eyes. Okay. But if we do this, we do it right. The annual Lakewood Charity Gala was the perfect opportunity. My parents would be there, basking in the admiration of their peers, completely unaware of what was coming. Lauren and I worked in secret, coordinating every detail. She had access to the clinic's AV system and ensured that the files would play on the ballroom's massive screens. I made calls to reporters, inviting them anonymously to the event. We had one shot to expose the truth, and we weren't going to waste it. When the night of the gala arrived, I walked into the venue with my head held high. The Millers were all smiles, greeting guests and working the room as if their world wasn't about to crumble. I spotted Lauren near the AV booth, and she gave me a subtle nod. Everything was ready. As my father took the podium to give his opening speech, I felt my heart pounding in my chest. He welcomed the guests, spoke about the clinic's legacy, and then introduced a video presentation highlighting their achievements. But instead of the polished promotional video, the screens lit up with security footage, financial records, and patient files. Gasps filled the room as the truth played out for everyone to see. My father's voice rang out clearly in one clip, ordering the cover-up of the 2013 incident. In another, my mother threatened Olivia. The final clip showed Lauren administering the fatal dosage, her face pale and terrified. The ballroom descended into chaos. My father shouted for someone to turn off the footage. But the damage was done. The reporters I'd invited swarmed, cameras flashing as my parents' carefully constructed empire collapsed around them. Lauren and I stood together at the back of the room, watching it all unfold. For the first time in years, I felt free. My parents had built their empire on lies. But now the truth was out. And they would finally face the consequences. The aftermath of the gala was everything I had hoped for and more than I was prepared for. The footage had gone viral within hours, picked up by every major news outlet in the region. Headlines declared the fall of the Miller dynasty, exposing decades of fraud, malpractice, and corruption. My father and mother were taken into custody that very night. Their carefully curated public personas shattered beyond repair. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one left humiliated and powerless. I had one, or so I thought. But victories like this don't come without collateral damage. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, sipping cold coffee as Ethan read the latest headlines on his laptop. Emma was still asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing outside our walls. Ethan's face was grim, his brows furrowed as he scanned the articles. "They're going to come after you," he said, not looking up. "You know that, right?" "I'm ready," I replied, though the tension in my chest told a different story. "They've already taken everything from me. What else can they do?" Ethan closed the laptop and turned to face me. "They can make this personal. You humiliated them, Taylor. People like your parents don't just let that go." I didn't need him to tell me that. I knew exactly what my family was capable of. I'd lived under their shadow for long enough to understand their playbook. They wouldn't stop at legal battles or public smears. They would dig, threaten, manipulate, whatever it took to regain control. And I wasn't naive enough to think they'd spare Ethan or Emma if it meant silencing me. My phone buzzed on the table, and I flinched. It was a text from Lauren. "We need to talk. Come alone." I showed the message to Ethan, who frowned. "Do you think she's still on your side?" "She helped me bring them down," I said. "That has to count for something." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Just be careful. If this is another setup, I'll be fine," I assured him, though the knot in my stomach said otherwise. "She's as much a victim as I am. She's not going to turn on me now." I met Lauren at a quiet diner on the outskirts of town. She looked different, smaller. Somehow, as if the weight of everything we'd uncovered had finally crushed her. Her makeup was barely there, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She didn't look like the polished, untouchable sister I'd spent years resenting. She looked human. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "What's going on?" I asked, sliding into the booth across from her. "Why the urgency?" Lauren hesitated, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her coffee cup. "I've been getting calls," she said finally, "from people who used to work at the clinic. Dad's lawyers are already spinning a narrative, trying to shift the blame onto me." "That's not surprising," I said, though the thought still made my stomach churn. "It's what they do. Sacrifice someone else to save themselves." She looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed. "It's worse than that. They're trying to bury everything. Not just the malpractice. The patient deaths. The bribes. All of it. They've already gotten to some of the witnesses. I don't know how much longer we have before they turn this back on us." The weight of her words settled over me like a heavy cloak. I had known this wouldn't end with the gala, but hearing it laid out so plainly made it all feel real. My parents weren't just fighting to protect their reputation, they were fighting to destroy us in the process. "So what do we do?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Lauren reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. "We hit back harder," she said. "These are the records Dad kept hidden. The ones he didn't think anyone would find. It's enough to take him down for good, but only if we move fast." I opened the folder, scanning the documents inside. They were damning proof of illegal kickbacks. falsified medical credentials, and even records of my father's involvement in silencing whistleblowers. It was everything we needed to finish what we'd started. This could destroy them, I said, more to myself than to her. Lauren nodded. But it'll destroy us too if we're not careful. We have to be smart about this. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of the sister I used to know, the one who had shared secrets with me as kids, who had once trusted me before our parents poisoned us against each other. I'm with you, I said, meeting her gaze. All the way. As I left the diner, the folder clutched tightly in my hands. I couldn't help but feel the weight of what lay ahead. This wasn't just about exposing the truth anymore. It was about survival. My family had spent years controlling the narrative, twisting the truth to suit their needs. But this time, the truth was on my side. They wanted a fight. They were about to get one. The days that followed felt like a blur of tension and strategy. The documents Lauren had given me weren't just damning, they were explosive. They revealed decades of corruption that extended far beyond the Miller family's clinic. There were payments to local officials, concealed malpractice suits, and falsified medical records that implicated not just my father but several other prominent figures in our town. If this information came to light, it wouldn't just ruin my parents, it would unravel a web of influence they had spent years building. Ethan and I sat in our home office late one night, poring over the documents. He had his laptop open, cross-referencing names and dates, while I drafted emails to investigative journalists who had covered corruption cases in the past. The room was dimly lit, the glow of the screens casting long shadows, and the air was thick with quiet determination. They'll try to discredit this, Ethan said, not looking up. Even with all this evidence, they'll say it's fabricated. You know how your father operates. I know, I said, my voice firm. That's why we're not just going public. We're going to make it impossible for them to deny. We decided to take a two-pronged approach. I reached out to national news outlets, providing them with select pieces of evidence to build interest in the story, while Ethan worked on contacting advocacy groups that could lend credibility to our claims. Lauren, surprisingly, proved to be a reliable ally, using her connections to ensure that the right people paid attention. But my parents didn't stay silent. The first blow came when a CPS worker showed up at our door, responding to an anonymous tip about alleged abuse in our home. Emma was in the living room, playing with her toys. When the knock came, I froze, my heart pounding as I opened the door to find a woman with a clipboard and a carefully neutral expression. I'm here to follow up on a report, she said, glancing past me into the house. Is this a good time? Ethan appeared at my side, his presence grounding me. What kind of report? He asked, his voice calm but edged with steel. The woman hesitated. We received an allegation of neglect and emotional abuse. It's standard procedure to conduct a welfare check. My stomach dropped. This was my parents' doing, I had no doubt about that. But I couldn't let my fear show. Instead, I invited her in, keeping my voice steady as I explained that the allegations were false. Ethan showed her Emma's room, her toys, her schoolwork, all the things that painted the picture of a happy, well-cared-for child. By the time the woman left, she seemed satisfied. But the encounter left me shaken. They're playing dirty, Ethan said as we watched her car drive away. You need to be ready for more of this. I am, I said, though the tightness in my chest suggested otherwise. The second blow came in the form of a legal notice. My father's lawyers were suing me for defamation, claiming that my allegations had caused irreparable harm to his reputation and the clinic's operations. The irony of the accusation wasn't lost on me. They were trying to bury me in paperwork, to exhaust me into silence. But if they thought I would back down, they didn't know me at all. The final straw came when Lauren called me in the middle of the night. Her voice panicked. Taylor. They've hired someone, she said. I overheard Dad on the phone. He's planning something dangerous. What do you mean? I asked. gripping the phone tightly. He said it has to look like an accident. Like what happened to Olivia. Her words sent a chill down my spine. Olivia's sudden death had already felt suspicious. But this confirmed it. They were willing to do anything to protect themselves, even kill. And now, I was their target. That night, I didn't sleep. Ethan and I stayed up, going over every detail of our plan, making sure there were no loose ends. I backed up all the evidence onto multiple encrypted drives, storing copies in safe locations. I reached out to a trusted journalist, giving them access to the files with instructions to publish everything if anything happened to me. We need to move fast, Ethan said as dawn broke. If they're this desperate, we don't have much time. He was right. My parents were cornered animals, and cornered animals are the most dangerous. But they had underestimated me. I wasn't the scared, broken girl they had discarded all those years ago. I was stronger now, and I wasn't fighting alone. As the sun rose, I felt a strange sense of calm. This was no longer just about revenge or even justice. It was about survival, mine, Ethan's, Emma's, and even Lauren's. My parents had spent their lives manipulating and destroying others to maintain their power. But now, their empire was crumbling, and I was going to make sure it stayed that way. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, I felt like I had the upper hand, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. In the end, the Miller family's empire of lies crumbled under the weight of the truth. Richard and Margaret faced justice in court, sentenced to years behind bars for their crimes. Lauren and I, once pitted against each other, found strength in unity, rebuilding our lives on honesty and mutual respect. The family estate, once a symbol of power, was transformed into a recovery center for victims of malpractice, offering hope where there was once corruption. As I held Emma's hand, watching her play in the garden of the transformed clinic, I realized the true victory wasn't in revenge but in breaking the cycle of manipulation and pain. Sometimes, the sweetest triumph comes from living well, free of the shadows of the past. This is my story, a journey of betrayal, truth, and redemption. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories for more.